think, ponder, reflect, and consider. This is Mull It Over with Dr. Richard Mull and Andrew Mull. Experience the life-changing power of God.
Hello and welcome to Mull It Over Podcasts. I am Dr. Richard Mull, and I've got a special co-host today. We got Coco here, Dawn Leonard from Operation Life Force, and we've got Lavina Ward and Isaiah Village, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and excited to get to know you. And so it's a village, and you have a vision for special needs children.
Yes.
And I just, right before we got on the air, told you about my son has Down syndrome, died in my arms, was dead for 40 minutes. God raised him from the dead. And we spent 10 weeks in the hospital. That's the book I am finishing right now. Final edits, layout. We have a cover design, little tweaking going on. You know, there's things like that. So it's a pretty exciting time. We actually have several books in that arena. Coco's written a I'm always going to say
Training.
it wrong. Training course. Yes.
So,
And for like churches, for children's workers, how to care for and minister to.
very much needed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the one that we're kind of working on together is Can You See Me? Do You Hear Me? And it's from families with special needs and from individuals with special needs. In fact, in my book, Nathaniel, as a 2-year-old, wrote sections of it, which it was me writing on his behalf, like his escape plans from the hospital, and they're hilarious. But I want to write a letter in there from him, from my perspective of his vantage point of the world and church, what he would say, because he doesn't have a voice still. He's still learning to speak. He had a trach for 7 months, and it's more the trauma even than the Down syndrome for him that we're praying for the miracle of speech. And he communicates a lot all the time, very intelligent, but turning it into words is challenging. So that's a little bit about us, and that's the world you operate a lot in. So I'm excited. I can't wait to hear more about the vision and what you guys are doing. And so introduce Lavina, yourself, and the ministry and how you got there, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And you asked how long. We've been over 2 hours before.
Okay. Well,
And we've ended at 45 minutes before. So we don't have a clock running. We want to get to know you. We want our listeners to get to know you.
Okay.
We want them to catch the vision. And so.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
As you said, I'm Lavina Ward, and the ministry is Isaiah Village. So I have a son that's 22 years old. He was diagnosed, 6 or 7 years old with autism spectrum disorder.
Mm.
So just traveling through that journey with him and doing it pretty much alone. You know, we didn't have people surrounding us that had a clue what was happening. And it's been 20 years, so things weren't as advanced as they are now, of course. And walking that life, trying to figure it out step by step, and not knowing where to go for resources, not having anybody else that understood, nobody else going through this, being judged by people around you.
It's a big deal.
About, what kind of a parent you really are.
Yeah.
And not understanding. And it gets kind of tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not what they would call norm, which there is no normal.
Yeah.
But
it's way overrated too. Normal
really
is just way overrated.
Really I mean, we all compare differently to each other.
Yeah.
I think that's what the plan was. I think that was God's ultimate plan, right?
Yeah.
So as we went through this journey, I really found myself in survival mode because I was trying to navigate being a mom to other children that were teenagers, going to nursing school, being married, and just, trying to figure it out. I didn't have time to do, and so it got kind of scary, and we had a lot of issues with what happened with our son. His name's Adam, by the way.
I want you to feel free to get as vulnerable as you feel comfortable.
Okay, cry.
Yeah, that's okay. And part of that is we dive into pretty deep subjects. Yeah. So
I think knowing exactly where we are today with what we're doing, it's nice to know the person that's doing it when you get involved with the ministry, because you see where they can attach with and connect with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So if I had somebody helping me that's never been through it, it's kind of a different experience. But, so we're not experts. I'm a mom and I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. And what happened with us is I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I was lost.
Yeah.
It was scary.
Yeah.
And so we did all this without walking with the Lord. So that was the big piece that changed for us was we had a phone call from his middle school that told us that we had to come to the school because they were going to send him to jail.
Wow.
So he's in middle school and his behaviors
my goodness.
He was experiencing some severe behaviors. And so their solution at the school was to put him in jail. So my husband and I had just began our walk. We've always been believers, but we were never walking in our life with Christ. And we had just started that journey. And so we stopped before we went to the school and we really sat and prayed. And we said, God, is this what you want for us? Because this is a hard one. Do we let him go through this? Is this what he needs to change this behavior to help him? We didn't know.
Yeah.
And so that was a really big thing for us. We brought our pastor friend from church with us. And we went and we said, whatever God needs. So we told God we were going to put it in his hands. It was very hard. When he was probably 11.
Wow. Oh, Lord.
So this is just one of the experiences we walked through. I'm a nurse. I'd be at work. We get phone calls all the time saying you need to come get your child. So it's a disruptive
humbling
life.
A lot of marriages don't survive it, but y'all's did.
Well, and the thing that's really blessing about this is not his natural father.
Oh, wow.
So my son's natural father passed away.
Oh, wow.
My husband, Randy, has been with us since my son was 2.5. And it has been a journey. And I
Congratulations, Randy.
Yeah, well, we had a moment in that moment.
No doubt about it.
7 years in, we didn't last. 7 years in, we split. And the thing is that split is what brought us to the Lord.
Wow.
So that split is where I started watching my Joyce Meyer CD by a friend of mine, and he started getting closer to a pastor friend, and we knew the journey had to be with God. So, but that's just a little. But so with my son, it just, he didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of friends because I isolated. Yeah. I didn't want to hear somebody tell me I was a bad mom, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And I didn't know where was enabling and where was empowerment. What is he capable of and what is he not?
Yeah.
And so the lines are kind of blurred. And all I ever wanted was somebody that understood. And little did I know at the time that the Lord gets it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And as I traveled through this journey, through his childhood, we found a church that we were attending, and I found another girl that had a lot of similarities to what I was going through for the first time. First time. And her son was very similar to mine. Like I said, we're all individuals, and we're all different. And so when you say autism or Down syndrome, that doesn't mean it's one thing. You see one person with Down syndrome, you've seen one person with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Same with autism. So when I met her, her name is Kelly, and she had a son that had the behaviors like my son as well. So much that he had to be raised with grandma because she had other children and they felt unsafe.
Wow.
And then she ended up having 2 other children that also had special needs. So I was just so thankful that we had her in our lives and that we could connect with each other. So then we started forming groups at church, small groups. And we became leaders of a small group at our home, just for anybody that signed up for it. Nothing particular, just to go over Sunday's message and be more in depth. And in that small group, Kelly joined us. A lady named Jen joined us. Another lady, and out of these 7 people, 5 of them had children with special needs.
Wow.
So just watching God work through that.
Yeah.
What an amazing need.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that, I've got my son's producing this show right now. Yeah. So we had exceptional kids, like not just normal, we like, honestly, people around town, like there was a, my kids are special in exceptional ways. Yes. And so I was known through that. And then we have a special needs child and the looks, the thoughts. Now, I've never really been fazed by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going, like, a lot of we were laughing. We did just sharing some of the stories, but they're mortifying stories. There are stories that have had people kicked out of church. Like, not that long ago, Nathaniel got wet. Well, okay, within the last week, one day he got wet, mm-hmm. and he was naked, like, so fast. And we had a conference going on here. Fortunately, I had enough forethought to foresee what might be happening. And nobody got to see it, but people have been kicked out of church. They don't understand a behavior like that, And then one day we went to church, and Mom had made him put on long pants and long shirt. And he went in the restroom. He's 16. I'm like, he can take care of himself. Next thing I know, the door opens and his clothes come flying out. And he had shorts and short sleeve underneath, thankfully. But we didn't know that. And I was just like, okay, but in the moment. And so we can laugh at those things. And we know what's going on in his brain because we know him.
Right.
But other people don't understand that, and so it could happen any week at church. If somebody spilled something on him, we don't know what he's going to do. I mean, he could go clean it up. We could go, we've got to change of clothes out in the car, and he may manage that well, but he can make the decision, mm-hmm. and he's fine with it. He doesn't understand what's wrong. And he would walk right through the church that way. Yeah. And it's not a sexual deviant behavior. It is not because there's so much immorality in our home that he is used to that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying this for the benefit of our followers, to understand when they look at a person like you with a child like yours and figure out what's going on in their home. Where did they learn? I remember as a 20-something, seeing a kid slap his mom, and I go, there's got to be domestic violence in that home. They had to learn that from somebody. Lord, forgive me for ever thinking that stuff. I don't think that way anymore. But, it's like until you're a parent or a parent of a special needs. Sometimes now when someone shares with us they're a parent of a special needs, you just look at each other and you go, yeah. You don't have to say anything.
That's why I'm looking at you that way now.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep. You get you don't need the stories. You know what they are experiencing. I was trying to share it with a pastor friend on Sunday, just a little bit, because I'm thinking we're writing this book, so I began that, and it was weird. It was like face glazed over, like, I don't need to hear your problems, and I'm like, it's not my problems. Okay. I want you to understand, because we're trying to engage here, and how many hurdles we have to jump to engage, and so yeah. I talk more than I normally do, but I want to set the platform for you because you've got a lot of experience. You've been dealing with a lot of families like this. Yes. And even as we're writing this book, I would love to draw on that experience. And some of those people write letters for us. You write a letter for us. If today you were to go, dear church, mm-hmm. this is what I want you to understand, what would you say?
That's a rough one because, and I don't want to say anything negative about my church per se, but yeah. I'll tell you, our son does not attend church. He has not attended for a long time, but it's very hard to be accepted, right?
Yeah.
And so you have different denominations that also have different traditions. We call our church Baptist-Costal. So we really believe a lot in the Holy Spirit. We're a very big praying church, and I've had people explain that they just need to pray over my son and take this from him.
Yeah.
Where I have to just say, I tell my church, this is something God gave him, and if this is where God wants him, that's where he's supposed to be. And there is a verse in John that asks, why is this man born blind? Mm-hmm. And why was he born blind? It wasn't because he sinned or his parents sinned, but because this is to glorify God. So for me, going to a church where they don't really accept a child, what I want them to know is this isn't something that just needs to disappear. Yeah. This is something somebody needs to be aware of.
Yeah.
And don't pray it away.
Yeah.
But just pray for God to do his work in it.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, that's what I feel, we don't have anybody trained in our church
Have
to
people
help.
have people tried to cast demons out
Yes.
of him? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's part of our ministry. We do that.
Mhm.
And I actually have seen God heal people with autism, with various special needs, and at the same time, like it would horrify me to see someone trying to, who didn't know what they were doing. There's a way to manage and minister to and pray over. I pray over my child, but to see someone with their zeal and their faith trying to cast a demon out of my son would be, it doesn't ever have to even
Traumatic.
look that way.
And I think the thing is my belief system. I don't believe. I'm not against thinking that somebody needs to have something
Yeah.
removed.
Yeah.
But if this is God's work, so let's see. My belief is know Him enough and understand what you're dealing with enough before you just jump to the conclusions. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
And it's about relationship.
It is.
It's about, unfortunately, too many times deliverance done in a church setting is a confrontational thing. And I don't think that's what Jesus did at all. I think there were times that the demons confronted him and he won the victory. And if something happens, if it's demons manifesting, then even in that arena, Jesus said, be silent. He didn't stir it up. He didn't, magnify it. So I agree with my heart because I've watched people do it poorly, and doing that kind of ministry, I'm sorry that it scared him, that it hurt him, that it was so offensive.
And like I agree with you. There's a right way to do things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the experiences we've had with the church. The other is, the behaviors. It goes back to behaviors, taking your clothes off, speaking your mind, not having the filters that you need, being very loud and disruptive, flapping your arms, things that draw attention where it's not allowed in the sanctuary. You can't have that here.
I believe we have a first-class miracle every week because our son does go and he's never quiet. But during church, he has headphones on and he's watching something. But even there, he could fill any room with his voice. And I'm like, the miracle that he can make it through 2 hours is most people don't understand. Like for us, it's like God's grace that we are able to manage that because it's not him. It is God that allows us to go through that. So, yeah.
Well, what made a difference with us, with our son going to church? We found several churches to go to that did not have a program, did not understand, did not accept. So we couldn't leave him in the children's ministry. He'd have to go to church with us. But when our walk first began, what I was telling you about the church that we were going to at the time, he was just a part of all the other kids. And it was a blessing because he did become saved and he did understand who the Lord is. And he does know who God is. But there's so many people missing out on that piece of life and that so needed hope that we have because the churches don't understand. And that's where they need that education. Because they need to know how to navigate that. Because just like, you bring it back to, I was talking to my daughter on the way here, and, we talk about, Jesus sat with the prostitutes and with, the, all the criminals and anybody that was broken. Well, we're all broken, but, so you have to meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
You can't do that if you don't understand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's part of why I'm actually writing the training courses to help churches so that if they do actually want to understand, they'll be able to handle the behaviors.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
Because, I'm a board-certified behavior analyst and a mom of 5 and a grandma, and I have my own experiences with churches and with some things that happened with my own children. And I just hate to see people just isolated, left alone. And really, it's not just the special needs families that are missing out. It's the church that's missing out on what those special needs kids and their families are bringing to the church. They're a treasure. And they bring gifts from the Lord that's needed in the body. So yes, I want to be aware of the needs of the special needs families that are isolated, but I also want the church to know what they're missing by not having the special needs children there.
I travel and speak, and very seldom does my wife go with me, because it would change the routine. And routine is way more manageable than being out of routine. And so even when we're kind of local and I'm speaking, it seems pretty awkward. Like, why isn't my wife with me? And people don't understand, like, for us to, like, there are people that we want to visit, we want to travel to, but it's like, okay, we won't sleep. He won't sleep. She won't sleep. The ability to engage even with people that we're close to is so difficult. If they come and visit us, it's easy. If we travel and visit them, and you get that.
It's a different environment. Yeah. It's a routine thing.
Yeah.
I do get that.
So tell us the vision of Isaiah Village.
Okay.
And how it even came about.
Well, it came about from that group of people that we sat in Bible study together, right, in our small group. And we started saying, okay, well, we all have kids that are teenagers or close to 18 or a little over. So how can we help each other? How can we help each other? You know, maybe we could get a communal home and they could all live together. Okay. And as they grew and we talked about it, and maybe we'd buy a house, and well, none of them wanted that. You know, we're thinking about what we want.
Yeah.
We're not, and what's best for them? Well, what do they want? You know, they do have opinions and thoughts. And my son wants everything every other child wants. He wants to have friends. He wants to be loved. He wants a place of his own.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to be heard, you know, and he doesn't want to be looked at as this kid with special needs. Yeah. Because he's just a kid. Now he's a young adult, you know? Yeah. And, so as we talked about it, and we thought, well, them living together is going to work. They don't want to live together. They want a place of their own. Yeah. And so we kind of squashed that, and we were just trying to figure out what to do. And I kept seeing this vision of this place, and I kept seeing it. And it's like this big building. It's a community center. And all these homes surrounding this community center. This place is tranquil and beautiful. And it has like the swings that are hanging down, like adult swings that you can like sit by the water, and it's got community gardens, and it's got, like farm animals. Mm-hmm. It's just everything that you could think of that's relaxing. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I kept seeing it, and I didn't know what this was I'm seeing. And this friend of mine, Kelly, I was talking about, comes to my house and said, I got to talk to you. I've been having a dream, and I want to talk to you about my dream. And when she told me, I hadn't told her my visions. And when she came over and told me about her dream, it was exactly what I had been seeing. Mm. And so it was very...
This is a safe place to cry.
It was I was like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than us. Yeah. This is bigger than our kids. Mm-hmm. And there's so many others out there that need help. And that's how this vision in Isaiah Village came about. Now, Isaiah was the book of the Bible that Kelly was studying. There's not one verse in there that we went off of, but she was studying the book of the Bible, Isaiah, at the time. And, talking about helping the oppressed. I mean, and even though my son, your son, our kids, they're people too, but they are oppressed in so many ways. And so, we said, okay, this is something we have to do. God wants us to do something bigger. It's not about doing it for my son. It's about doing it for God. And that makes a big difference. Yeah. That's God's plan. Yeah. I was nervous and scared because I'm a nurse and I'm a mom. I don't know anything about business. I don't know how to start these things. So I had to start finding out how. And the more I get worried and upset, and I bring it to the Lord and I say, God, I'm not equipped for this. And he reminds me of who was equipped. Was David equipped? Nobody's equipped. And I'm just so thankful, because then I have to lean back on him for everything. Because if I try to walk through it on my own, things don't work. And every time I get stuck in that and go back and ask for help and say, God, I can't do this, he shows me something more I can do because of him. I could do it through his strength. Mm-hmm. So that's my blessing with him with that. Yeah. And so Isaiah Village became a nonprofit status, and then it became a 501(c)(3) status, and then I was still working full time and still learning how to do these things at night. And I kept feeling like I needed to, I think, God's telling me I need to quit my job, and I just need to do this ministry. Really needs to go forward. And so I was scared. And so I went in and I talked to my boss, and she said, if that's what you feel you need to do, I work for a faith-based organization, and Faith Community Nursing through the hospital. And she said, but if you want to stay on part-time, you can. And I was like, oh, that's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed on part-time. And then I stayed on occasionally. And then I said, okay, I can't do this.
Yeah.
We have to stop because God wants me full-time.
Yeah.
And then at that point, things started growing a little bit faster. We've made a lot of connections in the community. I'm trying to learn about, this type of housing that we want to do. We could either call it independent housing or supportive housing, depending on the level of person that you want living here.
Mm.
The level we decided to start with was independent housing. And the reason why is it's the easiest to get into.
Mm.
And these are a lot of the gaps that are being missed. So my son Adam, my friend Kelly's son, they're the ones that don't qualify for any kind of services through our Agency for Persons with Disabilities. They are too high functioning to get the services.
Mm.
So we thought, let's start there, and then we'll move into how to do the things that with people that do have services and need a little bit more help, and get those later on.
Yeah.
So that's where we're starting. And it's a big project. Many people have done things like this throughout the United States. We've been to seminars. We've contacted people.
I have a friend in South Carolina, the Heckas, that have a vision that sounds so much like that. I don't know if you know them, but if I should put you in touch, just,
please, yes.
Because I know what it's like, the synergy and
it's very helpful to be in touch with other people. We went to a conference in Las Vegas, and people from all over the place, but every state has a different, a different law for how to do this. They have what's called a settings rule.
Wow.
And so we can't do a community with just people with developmental disabilities, because now we would be restricting them and not inclusive.
Mm.
We don't want to isolate. We
Right.
want to be inclusive and bring them in a community. So finding ways to do that where they're still safe, where it's affordable for them. My son gets Social Security, $900-something a month. Where's he going to live?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of places that are being built that have like 10% of their housing for affordability for people, that it's dedicated to people with disabilities of any sort. And their affordable income is $900 a month for a one-bedroom.
Mm.
So that's not affordable. So we want to do something a little different. We're working with people from HUD and, different areas, just trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
So since it's a big $1 million project, we are praying for donation of land or housing or whatever God has for us.
Mm.
And people say, where's it going to be built? I say, wherever God has it. We don't know. We live in Pinellas County.
Yeah.
That's where our resources are.
Yeah.
But it could be anywhere. We don't know.
Yeah.
So what we did was we started in Pinellas County by housing one person.
Yeah.
And we figured we had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then we have groups where we try to walk alongside, where I said I was all alone through this journey.
Mm-hmm.
We don't nobody has to do that.
Yeah.
So nobody has to do that. And we're a faith-based organization. We're not a religious organization. We don't expect anybody to conform to our ways, but we're going to love them with the faith and the hope that Jesus gave us.
Yeah.
And that's the way he does things, and what we feel and what we've experienced, we want to share that with other people.
Yeah.
So Isaiah Village's tagline is hope and independence. And our hope, we know, comes from the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And independence is what we're hoping they gain out of this.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we're looking for.
Yeah.
We walk alongside families. We help them anywhere from the school system, helping them with how to do an IEP. What is an IEP? Who can you contact?
What is an IEP?
And it's an individualized educational plan. You would know.
Yeah.
And so it's a plan to help to navigate the educational system with accommodations for people that need it.
Yeah.
And parents need to know what the laws are surrounding that, because nobody's going to volunteer that information to them.
No, not at all. And it can be a sticky situation when you go in, because parents and people from the school board and the teachers are all in a room together when you have these plans. And the school and the teachers, they all know the laws. They know what's available. And the parent doesn't. And the parent knows the child.
Right.
And so the combination is supposed to be beneficial for the child when you go into these meetings. And so we have somebody with Isaiah Village that helps the parents understand their rights, what the child's rights are, and how to navigate that.
That's amazing. Because I know when I went into the school with my daughter, this is before I was in the field I'm in, and I didn't know anything really. And I had had an education background, you know, and I still, you know, really didn't know the laws and what to expect or anything when I walked into that meeting. Yeah. And I wish I had known, because like her teacher at the time was like, oh, she's behind because she was homeschooled. He was blaming everything on that when it was because she had a disability. Right. And he just was totally tossing it aside. And it was, I wish I had known. I wish there was somebody like you who could have walked me through that. It would have been very, very helpful at the time.
Yes, I can relate. Yeah. Because I didn't have it. Yeah. You know, but so, you know, on these times when I feel like I'm going to give up on this because it gets hard and I don't know what I'm doing, that's when God brings somebody else towards us. Oh. So Ruth is the lady that is part of Isaiah Village now that does the IEP piece. And she actually has her own business doing it, which is she's autism strategist. And so she gets paid to do this with people. But then with Isaiah Village, she volunteers part of that for us, so that she can help us, you know, navigate that, because it's so needed, because there's so many people out here walking with blindfolds on, not knowing. And so that's one of the main pieces that we're working on now, getting that started more. And, you know, so even though we want to house adults, they're children before they're adults, and the parents need assistance, you know, so we do a caregiver group. It's a faith-based group. So everybody involved in this basically is somebody that was doing a little piece of something on their own, that God has put us together to do something together. So Linda is our caregiver group administrator, and she has written a book on caregiving, and it's faith-based. She's a caregiver. Her daughter's 26 with intellectual disabilities, and so she found herself not being able to rest and needing a break. Yeah. And her faith is so strong, and she just still felt weighed down and heavy. And so
talk about that, because people with special needs children, it is, how old is your child?
He's 22.
22. How much of your attention does he still require?
Okay, well, my son now, so I could be off on statistics, but I think it's people with developmental disabilities have, I think, 30% higher chance of getting mental health issues. Okay, so we already have neurological issues. So, so now as he's older, his mental health is declining a bit. So I spend about 6 hours a day with him, and he's high functioning, is what they used to call Asperger's. He's high functioning, is the normal person would say. But
so on the outside, people wouldn't easily pick up.
Oh, there's nothing wrong, and I'm saying, okay.
But you're kind of
even harder.
Spend some time.
I really do. I think it's even harder when a child with disabilities looks typical.
Yes.
Because people who see them expect them to act like a typical child.
Yes.
There's less grace, I think, for children who look typical.
Right. And I like that word, typical, because normal is the word everybody still uses with me, but neurotypical and typical, people don't even understand what some of these terms mean. So it gets confusing. When I try to describe what we're doing, I say we work with people with developmental disabilities. They're like, what's that?
Yeah.
Well, the terminology changes all the time.
It does.
And that's why I bring up special needs, even though some people don't like those terms, or, you know, it's very difficult that the terms can't continuously change, because then people don't know what it is, but they have come a long way, and they are a lot better than what they used to be. So
one of the things that I've run into, I'd love for you to respond to, is there's times that I go, I want to invite you into understanding what we go through, just to help someone grow in their understanding, especially someone that you're interacting with on, you know, let's just say church, but it could be other arenas. And most of the time, I feel like the attention span someone has for that is about that big. And so I back away and I'm done. And I'm like, their world would be enhanced if they would hear, if they would have some understanding, and there would be more of this. There would be more coming together.
Yes.
Respond to what I'm trying to communicate, what I'm trying to say.
well, what I'm hearing, what I think you're saying.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I isolated myself from people because it's hard to explain to people, and inviting people in, and it's difficult. And when you invite them into your world, you're not just inviting them into, I'd like you to come to my house for dinner. Well, we don't have many people to our house for dinner because, so my son can't.
You will be treated to a show if it's in the evening.
So, I'm gonna invite you over to my house. Okay,
yeah.
I would love, Richard, I would love to have you over. Bring your wife. I'd love to have you over. But let me just explain to you a little bit first. Because my son has some behaviors that people think are odd, but I would like you to just know that he has a big heart. He's very loving, and he has no filters. So when you come to my house, I just want you to be prepared ahead of time. And I have to explain that. I mean, why would I have to explain that to people? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So asking them to come into that, because it's a knowledge deficit, because people don't understand, like you're saying. And I think, Don, you said our churches are missing out. People are missing out.
Yeah.
Because like my husband tells me all the time, you are so patient with our son. And I'm like, I'm not really. It's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah. But God chose me to take care of him. God chose me.
I consider it a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you see it's a privilege, it's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
Because it's not anything, it's not disabling. It's the only reason it's disabling is because our community and our surroundings don't understand. So inviting them in and hoping that they could be a part of that, because they're only going to benefit to have understanding. The more you know people and understand, and it's helpful.
I like for my son, I don't know I've not met too many people that have been dead for 40 minutes, if I've ever met anybody.
Neither have I.
And I'm like, we were at the hospital, so that's the official time. It was longer than that because we're not sure exactly when he passed. I was carrying him, and when I pulled him off my chest, I said, "He's gone." And it took several minutes before a nurse came in the room. My mother-in-law had been doing compressions, so they started the clock when I don't know exactly when the doctor came in, the nurse, one of them, it was them who started the time. So there had already been some passage of time. And the fact that they stayed working on him for 40 minutes, as a nurse, is unusual. And he's alive and fine today. And we've had doctors walk in the anesthesiologist walked in the room. Now, this was after our 10 weeks there. He had not seen him since that day. And when we came back after being released, he was sitting there with a fishing pole, picking up fish with the magnet on the end. He walked in the room, and so he understands, like, your brain shouldn't be able to do that. You should never come to that place. He walks in, loses it, turns and leaves, and it's like 30, 40 minutes before he can compose himself to walk back in, and he goes, "I can't believe what I'm looking at." And that's the kind of miracle. He chose a boy with Down syndrome to do that. And he doesn't waste miracles.
He doesn't.
And it's like he is special. And that word can sound negative or it can sound beautiful. Yeah. And it is interesting. I'll just brag on my little boy. Yeah, so he walks into church. He's going to hug just about everybody in the room. He's getting more bold in that because there are people that are like, "You have no idea. I needed that today." Mm-hmm. Now, every week, there are people that he wants to connect with, especially people his age. He'll walk up and give them a hug, and they're like, they do that every time. He has to push past that because he perceives what that is. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "I really want to connect with you. I will reach again and I will hug you." And it's like, and they're good people. The people that are like, they're in the middle of a conversation. He walks up, and they're like, "This, not right now, get away." And I'm like going, he can't understand the difference between it's appropriate to hug right now and it's not a best to hug right now, wait, but it is. I actually, even as we're talking, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I want to hire a videographer to capture him on a Sunday morning that whole time.
That would be great.
I want to have a microphone on him because there are people that are going, wow, thank you so much. You have no idea I needed that. You'll hear that. And you'll also capture the, could you get away from me? You know, and to help people understand what they go through, what they experience.
It's so hard because when you talk about people, you know, when we're talking about letting them into our world, right, and letting them see what we walk through, I don't think anybody's going to truly ever understand. We can try to educate people, but unless you're living in it, you know, you can't. I have this, I'm visual, and I have this little, I guess they call them memes or whatever, and it's a person in a hole, a black hole, and they said, this is your special needs parent, and they're reaching up, and the only other person that reaches out to help them is another special needs parent. And it's because we get it, right? So we connect. So, and you can't, and I mean, you can never fully explain, but to be able to share the special love that's in the heart, it just comes out different.
Yeah.
You know, it comes out different, and it doesn't always look pretty.
Yeah.
But neither does mine.
My parents have a house in a 55 and older community, and there might be 30 people at the pool. You know, and elderly people, and then everybody sits there all going to get a hug. There would be a battle to not have that. And it's amazing. Like, there are people that it bothers, but a high percentage of the time they're like, they fall in love with him. And, you know, it is ministers to them. And it's, yeah.
If, when you were in the stage of isolation, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what could they have done during that time? What would have been helpful?
Honestly, being present. No opinions, no trying to fix it. I mean, presence is a big thing in a lot of situations, and I think that's one of the things I needed. I just needed somebody that cared.
So they didn't have to understand everything, be an expert. They didn't have to have answers.
Just be there. Don't be opinionated. Don't let it scare you. People are scared.
What if they didn't know how to act or what to say?
Then ask me.
That wouldn't have offended you?
No.
Because I know I've talked to people, and some of the reason why they don't is they're afraid they're going to do something wrong.
Right. So, you know, everybody's different. So for me, I could say that. For Richard, I don't know. What would you say? You know, do you want people to ask? Like, I would rather somebody ask me, and because communication is big, you know. And if you want to be with me and you care, just say, I care so much. I don't know how to help. Tell me how I can.
Yeah.
You know, my best friend since childhood taught me. She said, you know, I have this problem and I want to talk to you about it, but I just need you to listen. I don't need you to fix it. And the communication of that is big, because what we try to do as people is try to fix it. And we never really intentionally mean harm with that. But I could try to tell you all these things you can do to help you, because I want to help, because we're helpers. We have big hearts and we care, but that might not be the right answer. So just asking somebody.
How often could you guys do a date night?
Well, we still don't really do date nights very often. Well, my husband and I have been married 20 years.
Did you want to?
Yes. So, I mean, even in the beginning, in the beginning, I wasn't with Adam's dad. He was still alive, but we weren't together. But he would come over and he would actually even watch. So we have 4 children between us, my husband and I. 3 biologically mine, 1 biologically his, but we have 4 children. And so when we were together, Adam's father would come over and he would actually spend weekends with all of the kids for us so we could go away.
Wow.
Well, 2 years in, Rob passed away. And that was so detrimental. And my husband thought he was watching me grieve the love of my life when I was grieving the loss of help. That was the person that helped us. He was the only person I had that understood.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, even though he meant a lot to me, the grief was, and it sounds horrible if you don't understand, but when you depend on somebody so much for something, and that was the only person we had. We couldn't find a babysitter because they can't tolerate the behaviors. You're going to hear that a lot. The behavior. She's a behavior specialist. You understand. But the behaviors can be excessive, and people don't, and they're all individuals, so they're all different. So one behavior's something's going to work for it, where another one it's not. You know, another child, it might not work for that child. And so we couldn't find anybody. And even when we would go away, he would go away for a trip and then come back, and I'd stay with Adam, or I'd go away for a work trip and come back. He stayed. We never went together unless Adam came with us. Yeah. And bringing him places was difficult. Yeah. We would get kicked out of restaurants or, you know, different situations. Adam couldn't handle a Disney trip. Disney trips with kids, oh, how much fun. Not with our kid. Not with our kid. So with Adam, you know, 10 years old in a stroller, you know, because he couldn't walk, he couldn't function. It was too overstimulating, and we didn't even understand what was happening. Yeah. You know? So those trips became very bad days. Yeah. And so we still have to try and, you know, Adam lives at home with us, and Adam's schedule is not always the same. He doesn't have a reason, he says, to get up in the morning. And he says he doesn't have a reason not to stay up all night. So it's hard sometimes when, you know, and everybody has an answer for me. Well, maybe he needs this vitamin, or maybe he should get a job, or maybe he should. So, you know, people try to help. So a date night, my husband would absolutely love that. He tells me all the time. He says he gets a little jealous because I have to spend so much time with my son, and he's put on the back burner. But yet he has the heart to understand because he knows Adam needs it. He says, how do you do it? I said, he has nobody else. Yeah. So nobody else listens.
Wow. I'm so thankful my son is producing the show right now. He's normally here, but he's producing it from home. They you know, watch Nathaniel so we can get out, and Coco has, and so, you know, once or twice a year we get away. But I mean, that's one of those things, like I have a 16-year-old and we can't leave them. Right. Yeah. And there is a challenge to bringing them. Like, we've been bringing him to youth group, and we last about 45 minutes and we leave. And they turn the lights dark, and he hates being in the dark. But he's navigated that there. He normally just is not going to be in a dark room, you know? And there's so many things that, like, they're just different. And you can't just fix them. If you hire a behavioral specialist, they go, there is a process to changing this behavior. Oh my goodness, the number of processes that we've walked through, that we've had, because we have friends, a staff member that's ABA. So like we got special treatment that we couldn't have afforded. Right. That is just, praise God, thank you, Lord. And some of those are epic stories. And like her daughter, both of her daughters are behavioral specialists and own their own companies. And Carrie, one of her daughters, was like, never fail. We've done this. I guarantee Nathaniel is at the top of the chart for testing it. And it's an epic story that it'll be published, but I want to make sure I have my wife's permission before I tell it. But it was like, oh my goodness, like, oh, all the glory of, and the greatness and the wonder of the, specialness was on display. And just to be able to go potty on his own.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it was like, this was like, it was like, they call it an extinction burst. And it was like, we have to push beyond the normal boundaries. And
I never had the opportunity to have Adam in ABA, and after he turned 18, well, I have no guardianship. That's another issue with our children that people don't understand. So he is his own person. He can make his own decisions. They're not always the best decisions, and they might not always be realistic because he doesn't quite understand the world the way that the world is, you know. But and not everybody, I have several people right now that want to have ABA, but they either have personal insurance and can't get it. There's not enough providers. So something we did with Isaiah Village is Ruth, again, she's amazing. Ruth has taken classes to become a parent coach for ABA. Yeah. And so she's not an ABA therapist, but she has learned some of the ways to coach the parent, not the child. Yeah. And so and she's setting me up to become one so that at least we can help the parents understand the behaviors until they can get into programs like this or afford something like this, because it is important.
We joined one of her master's level classes and went through it. My wife and I and Coco together, pretty extensively, committed a summer to it to try to navigate some of the behavioral hurdles that we were dealing with. And it was pretty overwhelming. The level of dedication to modify and change. It was like, who's going to pay you for the number of hours that it takes to do those kind of things? And there's fruit, there's benefit, there's change. We get more freedom if we go through that. Not everybody even has access to that. We wouldn't even have known about that. We'd have to get a degree in how to parent our child in order to navigate some of those things, because some of it can be dealt with, but not by the means that we did. All the parenting books we did, none of that stuff was going to work. It's a whole different animal.
So one of the reasons I developed the course for the church is because number one, a church can't afford to bring in a BCBA. I mean, it's super expensive, but even if they could, the BCBA comes from the scientific point of view. And I didn't want a course for a church that didn't have a biblical point of view. It didn't have the education involved. And so I created it so that it wouldn't just be ABA. I brought the science of behavior in, but it's also my background as a children's pastor. It's also my background as a mom. I'm a grandma,
Nathaniel's been an educator.
But I would like to, in the future, develop the same thing for parents. Yes. Develop the same things for Christian schools. Because as far as I know, nothing like it exists. It's just you either get BCBA or you get education or you get being a parent. Well, when you've got a child who's having all these issues, you need all those worlds combined. Yes. The parent's too busy, too overwhelmed with the task of being a parent to be able to combine that all themselves. They've got a neurologist telling them what to do, a BCBA telling them what to do, maybe a breathing person telling them what. There's so many experts out there telling them what to do, and they just need to survive.
That's it.
I mean, so I hesitate to add another thing to their plate, and at the same time, I feel like it could be helpful to just have some basic things that make life easier.
I agree.
So much of what I teach churches is just, you can teach a lot through games. Nobody has to know they're being trained.
Yes.
I mean, the easy stuff. Now there's behaviors that's not going to work. Okay. There are, but there's a lot you can do with just simple, easy stuff that I wish every parent could know. I wish every teacher could know. When I was filming it, I had somebody who had been a teacher watching, and she's going, "Why didn't anybody tell me this as a teacher?" I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know why all our knowledge has to be separate. Why you as a teacher get taught one thing, you as a parent get taught another, and you as a behavior, why? I don't know, but that's the gap I want to bridge. Yes. It really is. It is the gap that I would like to. Because in my own life, it was necessary. In my own life, I had to learn a lot. And my kids are very high functioning. You wouldn't even know they had disabilities, honestly. But when they were younger, I had a lot to go through. I had a child who, when she was 6 years old, nobody understood anything she said. So she couldn't learn how to read because she couldn't say she only said 3 consonants. So if she's reading a book, how do you know if she's reading it or not? I had to completely develop an entire reading program because at that time, nothing existed. Now there is stuff, but at that time, nothing existed. What do you do with that? I had another child who's very ADHD, but has a lot of other learning disabilities coming with it. He looks typical. He is typical. But at the same time, he was going to be impulsive. He was going to have a lot of things going on that on the outside, nobody knew, but I knew, but I had to put him in public school for a year in order to be able to get the help I needed, because that's the way the scholarships worked. So they weren't able to do anything. He was making more progress at home, but that's the way it worked. I didn't have anybody to show me how to do it any differently, you know? So I love what you're doing, that you're there to bring people together.
Wow.
That you're bringing parents together to share with each other what they learned. You're bringing some outside people in. It's amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That's all God's work. I'm just trying to make it come together, you know. And something I'm finding, you know, we have several families, and somebody asked me, where do you find your families? And well, they find us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go searching for families, and it's just something that happens because one person knows another person, and they tell somebody, you know. I mean, we do vendor events, and we tell people who we are and what we're doing, but the places I get phone calls from are none of those places. It's the oddest thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the people that come to us, it's hard because like we have this caregiver group. You would think so many people need it, right? So we tried doing the caregiver group and social group. So your child comes and goes in another room, same building, so you feel secure. And we have people that are Agency through Person with Disability, have been certified, so they know what they're doing, and they're, you know, able to be in this other room. And then we have the caregivers, and we get like 2 a week because it's hard. I mean, it's still hard. It's like, I don't know how to help people because so many are still in survival mode. I
was about to say, they're so exhausted.
And it's like, you know, you're talking about how, you know, I'm saying, and you bring it to light for me, and then like how Ruth is doing this with some parents, but they've asked her for this information, you know, so people come to her. But when we try to teach, like when somebody tried to teach me something, I wasn't listening to them. You're telling me what I'm doing is wrong. I've already been told I'm a bad mom by everybody else. So I'm in defensive mode now, you know, and I'm like, you know, don't tell me. I know what's better for him than you do. And I get all, you know, upset. So my walls are going up. You know, so there's so many pieces to this. It's not just the child. It's families. I mean, families. I don't know how your other children feel, Richard, or how your children feel, but I have 3 other children. One of them has been such a blessing because there have been times when she's been able to help us with Adam so that we can do things. Maybe not go out of town, but she would help us so we could have a few hours or whatever, or I could work, you know. And so getting that piece there. And then we have a daughter that absolutely has no understanding, thinks that we spoil him. He gets everything he wants and wants nothing to do with him. So, and it breaks families apart sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So the siblings also need support.
They do, very much.
Yeah, Andrew, who produced this, actually created a video, Top 10 Reasons It's Impossible to Live with Richard Mall, that you can find online. He's like, no, don't say that. But it was like, he was like, how do we compete with Miracle Boy? And it was in jest, and it was pretty funny, but it's real. It's true. I mean, in a lot of different fronts, you can't compete. You can't. First of all, we had 10 weeks where we came home because we cared about them and tried to engage with them every day. But we were, between us, 24 hours a day, one of us was there. And it was, you know, that just one summer like that impacted every one of them. And then, you know, just life, it changes when you have a child. So yeah, they were always very helpful and have been, but there are limits. It's not their child.
That's right.
You know, so like, can we get away for a week? Like that, like, whoa, no, like, you know, that stuff like that is you know, where do you have those opportunities? Which most people are like, all of our friends that are our age are like doing things, and it's normal for them to think a certain way. And we're like, that would be nice. It'd be nice to be able to you know, get away and leave our 16-year-old alone, you know, or our 20-some-year-old alone. And you kind of realize that's something we may never experience, some of those things, you know, apart from the grace of God. But it's like, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, when you have your dreams of what future's going to be, there's a depth to some of those.
There is. There's this analogy somebody told me, and I'll probably get it all wrong, but you'll get the point. So as a girl grows up, you know, she dreams of this awesome vacation. I want to go to Paris, right? Have you ever wanted to go to Paris? You want to go to France. You want to see the Eiffel Tower, and you're going to spend this time there, and it's going to be grand, and you're going to just be able to take all the photos and get all the culture. And the special needs parent, we get Miami. We got Miami. So we still got a vacation, but it's hectic and busy and a lot going on. And there's no Eiffel Tower, but there's still beauty there. But you have to find the beauty in it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we still get to have a lot of good vacation time, right?
Yeah.
We still get to have a lot in our lives, but it's not what we expected.
Yeah.
So expectations are going to fail you in life, and you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
But if you just let it be and just remember that everything is a gift, and it's a hard process to go through. Because in my beginning, I didn't. I thought, why me? And I don't why me anymore. I'm thankful.
Yeah.
I do why me, but in a different sense. Like, what did I do that you think I can do such things? You know?
It's such a waste of energy to spend our lives like that. We're not victims, you know, and God has blessed us, and our children, you know, those special needs children are a blessing, and they enrich our lives. But there is a cost that.
We're in Miami. We're just not in Paris. So what? We're still on vacation. Come on. Let's enjoy it.
We do it for three nights, and then we're like, we have to get back to our bed and routine just so that anybody can sleep. You know, although some of those things are stretching, you know, and you always want to go, what can we do now? You know, that they're growing, and there's, you know, we've learned things, and you apply some of those things, and your horizon expands a little bit. But there's a governor. You know what I mean by that? Like when I drove a school bus and it had a governor on it. 55 was as fast as you can go. It doesn't matter what the speed limit says. You can only, then there's governor on life.
It's controlled.
Yep.
Definitely. So those are part of the things that, you know, there's so many areas that we need help in this world. But through Isaiah Village, the things that we want are to make sure that everybody feels that they're just as special as the next person. You know, so it's a village, because it takes a village. It really truly does. And, you know, and our logo is a heart, because it's all about love. It's about the heart, you know, and that's truly where we should be, you know, operating from. And so we want a place where it's inclusive. All people can be included. We want a community center where, you know, the kids that are in the neighborhood can come over and watch a movie at the same night as my son or somebody else, but yet it's accepting to all abilities. You know, all abilities are accepted. And it's just want it to be a safe place. You know, and then the community center is the main hub of it, you know, because we could have different agencies that can come in and help the community, and just trying to pull people together, you know, because there's so many resources that are out there. ABA therapy, how many people know about that?
Not many.
You know, I mean, it was not something available. And then how do you get to it? And what insurances? And so how do we pull and give this information to people? So just having an information center inside with, you know, things and doing different sessions where we can educate people on things that are out there. And, you know, and we're not asking for people to pay us to do it. We're just asking, you know, we're trying to do donation and fundraisers, and because not everybody, especially, you know, can afford it. I mean, these times are really hard. And I mean, we just want everybody to be a part of a community, to be a village, to help each other make it through. And peer-to-peer is very, very surprising at what people can do peer-to-peer. Ruth has a 6-year-old boy. She is going and attending a church, and he has autism. I can't say he's nonverbal, okay, because he does verbalize, but very little. Most of his communication is not verbal. But we had an event at a church the other day that she attends, and I went with her, and I got to see him in a moment. He was having a moment, and this little girl came up and took him by the hand and walked him over to the park. And this is her peer that Ruth has been working with that is typical. And so they walked over together, and he calmed down in her presence, but he couldn't calm down in mine or in Mom's, or, you know, but this is a friend. This is somebody on his level, you know, that's there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it was great to see that. So just having two people together that can be there to help each other. My son might not be able to hold an everyday job like some, but if you have an electric bike and it needs to be fixed, he can show you how to do it. If you want to learn how to go fishing, he'll show you how. So, you know, they have skills and special abilities. This is their superpower, right? So, you know, and so let's let's hone in on what the abilities are, and let's find out what he can do. And if he has to have a job for society, then let's create something.
Yeah.
Let's not make him fit in the box to where he has to go out in society and, work at Publix, because that's the store that thankfully is very wonderful and takes on lots of people with special needs. But what if he doesn't want to work at Publix?
Yeah.
So, like every other child, he wants what everybody else does, right?
Yeah.
So,
I love that you brought up the typical children being with anybody with special needs, because I don't like that they're segregated. I love when everybody's brought together. My grandchildren, because their mom is a single mom, they spend a lot of time in our clinic. And so to them, they don't see special needs as something weird. They're just friends to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to watch what a difference that makes. For the child that they're friends with special needs, it makes a difference. I mean, just practically speaking, it makes a difference. They have somebody modeling typical social skills. They have somebody modeling speech and all of that. But they have a friend.
That's right.
A friend that can handle it, because the special needs and the special needs time handle each other. They're triggers to each other.
Right.
So if you have some typical children, and they're not going to be triggering each other all the time. But it's also, I watch my grandchildren and I'm going, it's amazing how it helps them, because they're learning now not to be judgmental. They're learning to have compassion. They're learning how to love when it's not always easy. The character and the gifts of the Spirit and that they get to use now, the fruit of the Spirit that they get to use now, they wouldn't have without their special needs friends. It's just, it's amazing for both.
It is. It really is. When I went to this church with her, I was like, wow, do they have a special needs program here? She just put me in check. She said, no. She said, but they're accepted. So it's not about a special program.
Yeah.
It's about acceptance.
Yeah.
It's about, and then when you're teaching children at a young age, and this is something that our church is trying to do right now, so I was very happy about, because they don't understand. But they're actually bringing in an ABA therapist to teach the younger kids the right way to treat each other. Whether you have a special ability or not. So with having that knowledge at a young age, when you're our age, you're not